It is my privilege to announce the next session, Driving Impact Through Data Insights, Harnessing Public-Private Synergies for a Viksit Bharat in 2047. Many of you in the room will say, why did it take MRSI 33 seminars and 37 years in existence to actually get this topic together? And I think sometimes there's a right time and there's a right person. So perhaps this was the moment we were waiting for as an industry and as an association. We are so privileged to have Dr. Saurabh Garg with us today, who will take us through the keynote address on this really important topic. I think if we want to go to the next stage, this is what we are all looking at. I mean, we're all fiercely nationalistic. We want to contribute. We see what has happened in our nation. We want to contribute, and this is the perfect moment, perhaps, to start thinking of how we can do it better. And I'm sure we will be very lucky to hear more from Dr. Garg on this. Dr. Garg is Secretary, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, also known as MOSPI. He was an IAS officer of the Orissa Cadre. He's presently the secretary with MOSPI, with the Government of India. Prior to joining MOSPI, Dr. Garg was Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, where he was involved in the formulation of policies for social, economic, and educational empowerment of the vulnerable and marginalized communities. Previously, also, he was the CEO of the UIAI department, where he was instrumental in expanding the usage of Aadhaar and strengthening the technology stack of the Aadhaar ecosystem. He was Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, also Secretary of the Departments of Agriculture, Industries, Urban Development with the government of Odisha. He has been on secondment as advisor to the World Bank in Washington, DC. Prior to joining the IAS, he was with the Tata Administrative Services, so that he started his career perhaps on the corporate side. And but I think the nation is so lucky that he joined the IAS, hearing all his many achievements. He has rich experience in the domains of digitization of agriculture, digital identities, direct benefit transfer schemes, infrastructure, foreign direct investment policies, and urban development. Dr. Garg holds a PhD in International Economics and Development from the Johns Hopkins University, USA, an MBA from IMA, and a BTech from IIT Delhi. He was a Chevening Gurukul Scholar at the LSE London. It is, of course, our massive privilege to have Dr. Garg with us today, and may I request Nitin to come on stage again to welcome Dr. Garg.
Good morning, and thank you MRSI for inviting me. A pleasure to be here. I had met the managing committee a few weeks back, and they mentioned this opportunity to talk about what we are doing in the government, very similar to what all of you are doing for the corporate sector. So a real pleasure to be here. And I was also very happy to notice that the MRSI, the seminar, the annual that you are having, is so much more focused on research, and that you are actually having research papers that are being discussed. So I must compliment all of you for this kind of annual seminar that you do. I'll talk a bit of what in the government we are doing, which is perhaps a corollary to being a market research. And I think you might be slightly surprised that we do this kind of a market research, but believe me, we do, and I'll talk about that. And of course, I'll talk about how perhaps we need to collaborate much more deeply than we have been doing up till now. And I'm sure this forum would help us work together. I start with this slide because very often people are not aware there's a Ministry of Statistics in the government. I suppose statistics has already been important. I don't know if you are familiar with asterisks and obelisks, you would have heard of vital statistics. And more recently in Harry Potter's novels, the Mughal government had a division of vital statistics. So I suppose that's the corresponding of the Mughal government that we do out here. And I'm not getting into the details, but sample surveys, which I would say is market research in our lingo, is what we implement and do on a regular basis. Just to also mention that what are the products that we publish. The first is the GDP. The GDP figures that we bring out quarterly, the growth rates, both real GDP, nominal GDP, the size of the GDP. That's one of the major products that that the ministry does. The inflation index, which is used in the monetary policy by the RBI and used perhaps by a lot of you also. So that's the second product we bring out regularly, the consumer price index. The index of industrial production is something that we do by a sample survey of industrial establishments on a regular basis. Then we also bring out the labor market figures, the unemployment figures, the worker, the WPR, the labor force rates, etc. And I just mentioned 3 or 4 of them, so that just to give you an idea of what we do and what our products do, because we work in a way insulated, if I can say, from a lot of activities at the ground level. And of course, the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG indicators, is something that we do also publish them on a regular basis. I'm not getting into other details. I noted that when Nitin made his presentation, he mentioned that the industry started in 1960s. I must say that the sample survey started in 1950. So we predate the market surveys, and perhaps we were one of the first few countries to start sample surveys. Professor Mahalanobis was also associated with the 5-year plans initially, was the harbinger of sample surveys that you can actually make industry-wise, nation-wise estimates by doing sample surveys. And these are just a list of some of them that we do. I will not get into the details, but just listed some of them. But I must mention about the time use survey. We did the second time use survey just brought out last year. And it gives an idea of how people spend their time, how much time they spend on social media, how much time they spend on learning activities, in recreation activities, in sleep, in eating, and a host of, and it's a pretty widespread survey, so it covers all kinds of sections of people. Just to give an idea of the numbers that we do, we visit annually about 2 crore households or establishments every year across the different surveys that we do. And just to give one example, in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is brought out every month, we visit about 2,300 markets every month, 25 shops per market. We track nearly 300 commodities and bring out the prices of those, and then bring the data out. So there are nearly about 5.5 lakh records we collect monthly, and that's what's lead to the price index. And on the right side, you would see the sample surveys that we use. It's typically no survey would be less than 1 lakh, and I suppose in a population of nearly 144 crores, it's not feasible to try and make estimates at population scale without having a sample size big enough. So it varies anywhere between 1 lakh to 5 lakh in the surveys, depending on the questions and all. And some of them are monthly, quarterly, annual. So the fact remains that across every day, there are someone going to some establishment or some house for a survey. Just to mention about the Viksit Bharat and what the next 25 years, how we can reach that. And I just want to mention this quote of the Honorable Prime Minister, which he made just earlier this year on Civil Services Day. And he exhorted all civil servants to become experts in data-driven decision-making so that policy design and implementation have become more accurate. And I don't think any one of us can have any issues with this focus that we have. What does Viksit Bharat mean? These are some indicators that have been something that within the government we're talking about a 30 trillion GDP from somewhere around between 3 to 4 million presently. We're talking of an $18,000 per capita income from somewhere around $2,600 per capita income as of now. We're talking of exports of nearly 9 trillion. We're talking of obviously zero absolute poverty, 100% skilled labor, some kind of skill, infant mortality rate, which is of 2. And these are some indicators, measures that have been there so that it's clear that we are talking about a roadmap which has a goal to be achieved. And I'm just listing some of them, and there are a host of many more. This is from, I don't know how many of you have seen this, but there was, every year the World Bank brings out the World Development Reports. And the 2021 WDR was focused on data. And they looked at the entire data analytics, data processing in terms of how individuals, governments, and the private sector can get together, both on the data production side and collection side, but more importantly, as much on the policy making and delivery side. So I'm not getting into the details, but I do recommend, if anyone is interested to know more about it, do go through the WDR of 2021. And the public-private synergies can be in various areas. Mr. Kamath talked about AI/ML, and I think that's an area increasingly that area would spell a lot of opportunities for this kind of collaboration that is possible. And whether it's on the creation side, the collection side, processing side, and of course, overarching framework of privacy, security, and ethical use in any case has to be there. Data collaboration already is working in many fields, and I think one area where even India is very actively using this data collaboration between the public and the private sector is in disasters. For example, just to get an idea of how many people were there prior to whether a landslide has struck or a cyclone has struck, a mobile phone usage has been used very, very effectively just to get an idea of the number of people who were there. And I'm not getting into the details, but in Africa or in other countries, and some of the smaller countries like Estonia, Finland, they've been using it much more effectively than perhaps we have been up till now. Just to talk of a bit, in one sense, we have been collaborating with the private sector right across the past 75 years because all our data is collected either from households or from establishments, whether it's the annual survey of unincorporated sector enterprises, the ASUS, the annual survey of industries, the forward-looking CAPEX survey, and we just completed a pilot survey of service sector enterprises, which was a gap in our data that we did not have a regular survey of service sector enterprises, and from January 26, we would be doing that. So obviously, we can only function if the enterprises support us with the data that is extremely necessary. One other activity we've just done is empaneling a set of market survey agencies. I've just named a few, and we just empaneled some of them because we don't have the bandwidth to be able to do the surveys that the government and the different ministries want us to do. And I think we would continue to lean on market survey agencies and perhaps lean on much more in the future to help us look at niche surveys which are not the flagship ones to ensure that we do it through members of the MRSI for that matter. Technology is one area that we are focusing on. We have a data innovation lab to look at projects, and we are doing 5 or 6 projects on AI ML, how that we can integrate in our surveys, in our processing, and our analytics. We created a research and analysis driven to look at what kind of insights that we can draw. Because the unit level data that we have, obviously you can imagine that if you are going to 5 lakh households and we have a questionnaire which takes 45 minutes, 1 hour, or in 2 or 3 sessions, the kind of details that we have in those questionnaires, it's only a very limited part which we are actually bringing out and using it in our flagship products, whether it's a GDP or the price index, indices, etc. And a lot more can be done, and that's an area we are looking for, working with various academia, research institutions, etc. And of course, alternative data, which has only come up over the past decade, which is now available, including whether it's geospatial data, mobile data, e-commerce data, scanner data, how we can collaborate with the private sector and utilize and leverage that much more effective for policy making. Digital payments is another area that we have a lot of data now. We are working with NPCI on how, at an aggregate level, we can get that data to get trends of growth across different sectors of the economy. I mentioned about e-commerce data. Geospatial data is something which we are now using in our urban frames, as we call them, in terms of to decide the sampling, what household to visit, which is establishment to visit. And that is something that we are going to use increasingly. And that is something where we would require a lot more private sector support. I'm not too sure whether you're able to read this, but the types of data is not only, it's obviously not static, but tourism statistics. We are doing a tourism and travel survey these days to get an idea of what are the kind of modes of conveyance that people are using and what's the kind of distances they are traveling on a regular basis, and what is the reason for the travel. So those kind of data, but perhaps we can use mobile phone location data, subject of course to privacy concerns and meeting the requirements of the DPD Act. Electricity, transportation, for example, the e-Vahan data, the toll data gives a lot of idea of the kind of goods that are being transported, what is happening in different parts of the economy, and you can even look at which parts of the country are having greater transportation of goods which are growing. And so a lot of this data, and we are working with the different agencies within the government to try and get this data so we can draw insights which can help the private sector to make decisions. Some of the areas where we've already started work in use of alternative data is for the price, the inflation numbers. So we're working with some of the e-commerce sites and companies, and also for the scanner data with some of the large mall who have large shopping of retail outlets. I mentioned about the e-Vahan data, which helps us to get much better and more accurate estimates on a quarterly basis of the GDP growth rates. GST data is, of course, a goldmine of information. So going forward, our estimates of GDP would become so much more robust and so much more deeper because of the availability of this kind of data that we have. And as I mentioned, we maintain the highest levels of anonymity and confidentiality. For 75 years, the Ministry of Statistics has been going to households, and fortunately, you would have never heard of any data leaks from the Ministry of Statistics at an individual level. When we were interacting with a number of private companies, one of the areas of concern of theirs was on the issue of disclosure of trade secrets. So I'm sure if we discuss, we can figure out a mechanism to ensure that you have no concerns because we're not really looking at individual product level data. We want it aggregated, and that shouldn't really impact any industry in any adverse manner. Just to give some examples of how public data can be used more effectively, because on our part, the data that we collect, we sincerely believe that it's not being leveraged to the extent it can be leveraged for private sector decisions. All our data obviously is public data. It's available to everyone for use, but we want it to be used so much more effectively. There have been various studies. The WDR, which I mentioned earlier, of the World Bank, spoke of the addition to the GDP of anywhere between 0.5% to 1.5% of GDP. The US Department of Commerce did a study in 2014, and the kind of additionalities of data are really humongous. In fact, we are having a consultation next month with IIM Bangalore is hosting it, and they are anchoring it to look at what is the value of data. Can we try and make some kind of estimations? And that is something, it's very important that people realize that data can add value, but obviously how much it is that the numbers are something that we would like to have better sense of. I'll just give a few examples of how the data that we already have in the public domain of possible uses of that data, and I'm sure the researchers out here are smarter. They can definitely figure out what else they can do with this data. The GDP data that we bring out every quarter, and then annually, of course, is much more in detail, has a lot of granular data at the sector level and in different areas, including investments, stock positions, etc. And it obviously gives a broad sense of the direction of the Indian economy. But if you look at the agriculture side, we have data on 130 crops, and we have that at a very granular level. At the state level, we have it. We have data on where capital investments have been done and what's the kind of growth rates you can. And I think I would especially mention the supply and use tables, which is a 140 by 140 matrix, which gives an indication of what products from what sector act as inputs for another sector. And these are really detailed, and would strongly urge researchers who have interest to figure out what are the linkages between different sectors. This SUT would be extremely useful. The price data, as I mentioned earlier, there's the consumer price index and the wholesale price index. Both of them have the large number of products there are, and seasonalities, what are the price, geographical areas, why do prices increase in certain areas, logistics availability is no doubt, what is the kind of warehousing that is available, or the lack of warehousing which ensures that prices are much higher of the same product in one state and not in another state. And I think a lot of such kind of insights can be drawn. And if we look at price data along with the IIP data, there would be a lot more insights into the kind of volumes of products that are available or not available for that matter. The periodic labor force survey is something which now we bring out on a monthly basis in terms of rural-urban, which gives an idea of the unemployment situation, both rural and urban. And more importantly, we have questions on the skill levels. So it gives an idea of where there is lack of what skill in which sector or which geographical area, and what's the kind of trends in wages and earnings. We are strengthening this part hope to strengthen this part as we move ahead. And in fact, we would be very happy to get suggestions from you in case, because we have a set of questions, by tweaking some question, we can get an added insight or an information. And I've already mentioned about the numbers that we are doing, so would be very happy to get feedback from you. And which obviously gives, the PLFS is perhaps our most used data, if I can do it, because it is so granular. We go to every household, and every month we bring out this, so it's something which I would urge if you haven't looked at it. The household consumption expenditure survey, the last one we did in 23-24, which is a survey which spans, it's done in 3 sittings because each sitting takes nearly an hour. So it's a 3-hour survey and gives what are the kind and a kind of product level and even the type of rice that people eat or not eat, etc. Fruits, vegetables, and that's what really has also used in determining the poverty levels and the growth of how the, and we have it, the data at different income levels, at the lowest quantile from 0 to 5% to the highest 95 to 100% level of consumption. And what we are now doing is that every survey that we do, we want to be able to bring out district level estimates, because that's what we have been bringing out, national and state, but it's the district level estimates because policy making needs to be so much more granular and targeted. So that's something that we are working on. The next household consumption expenditure, we were earlier doing every 5 years, we'll be doing it in 3 years, which will be in 27. The annual survey of industries, I think, is a much more used. It gives an idea of also that what is the output per factory, the employment, a number of people engaged in which sector, etc. This is a survey that we've been doing now for the past 3 years, and which gives a sense of the informal sector, because that was earlier a gap that we did not have information on the unincorporated sector, a sector working from home, if there's someone doing some tailoring at home, doing a cycle repair shop, and it gives the number of establishment, number of workers. And what is surprising is the number of them who use the internet. It's more than, and there's a jump between just in 1 year, more than a 5% jump on the number of such establishments using the internet. And obviously the number of female-owned such enterprises is really expanding, and which indicates that at the village level, a lot of them are doing work at their homes. There are these other enterprise surveys, the service sector, which one I just mentioned about, which we are doing the first full-fledged survey from next year. We have a pilot survey that we did last year. The CAPEX one is a forward-looking survey, which gives an idea of what is the kind of investments that corporates will do over the next 2 years. And obviously, this is a much deeper survey than many of the other surveys that even, for example, the RBI does and other organizations do. And I think the real value would be in trying to look at results from more than one survey and then bring out insights. And I'm sure people in all in this room present would be much more tuned to do that kind of work. I'm not talking about the dissemination work that we are doing, but we have a mobile app, GOI Stats, which gives some of the highlights of some of these data that we have on our website. The website QR code is also there. And we just brought out an improved data portal, e-Sankhiki. So would urge you to go to that portal and especially give us feedback, because we are trying to make it more intuitive, more user-friendly, and ensure that whatever data that we have also a micro data portal where the unit level data, which is anonymized, is there. And that is something which a lot of researchers like to use, because that's really give a lot more insights. So dissemination is something we are focusing on, and this is, I would say, a part of that effort to reach out to industry organizations, possible agencies who might be interested in this data, and would love to get your feedback on how we can produce more data which is relevant for policy making, decision making. In fact, our tagline is data for development. That's the tagline of our ministry. And that's what we want to do. And I'll end out here. Viksit Bharat is the goal that we want to achieve, and I'm sure with the support of everyone, we will get there. Our job is to ensure that we measure that trajectory, that path. And I'll just end with the words which I mentioned, that our job is to measure what we treasure. So we need to determine what is it that we treasure, and Viksit Bharat, there are some. And equally treasure what we measure so that policy making becomes so much more granular. So thank you for inviting me. A pleasure to be here. And I wish you all the best in your next 2 days in your seminar. Thank you so much.
Dr. Garg, we have some questions, if I may ask. So the first question is perhaps a Gen Z question. There's an idea come for you to say that there's so much public data. Could we have hackathons specifying a particular objective or problem areas, and we could collect teams of researchers who could come up with possible solutions? What do you think about this?
Absolutely. I'm so happy that I missed talking about the hackathons. We've done about 3 over the course of this year. 1 is going on. Our first one we did at IIT Gandhinagar, and we had people from various institutions, and we gave them specific problem sets that we did. Yes. A second one we did on design. We asked for suggestions on how we can improve our infographics and etc. like that, and we gave them a set of data. And the third one we are doing in conjunction with what is it called, India Hackathon, the one that Ministry of Education does. So we would be delighted to partner with MRSI and pick up some topics which are of interest to you, and see how we can work on that. And our objective is that more and more young people should use the data that is available. And obviously all our data sets, we open out to them. They're already in the open, but any support. So we would be very happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that answer. We have another question. You earlier talked about how there's been collaboration with the private sector in cases of disaster and some issues like that, emergencies like that. What would you feel we can do perhaps preemptively or proactively, for social good or for anything else? Do you have any thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah, so for example, if I can give on mobile data, we just did we identified 4 sets of alternate data that could be used. Mobile data was one, geospatial was another. And we brought in Ministry of Tourism because that's one obvious area where we can work with them, which will help them to determine what are the kind of facilities required, keeping in view the footfalls that come in and what number of hours that people spend out there. So I'm sure we can figure out other such alternate data that we now have available, which can help different policymakers, different governments to channelize the investments accordingly. And I think this is an area where we would be happy because this is a growing area and it requires a lot more work. So absolutely would be very happy to work on this area, which can preemptively help in channeling investments is just one kind of thing. We can think of a lot of others also.
Right. We have some great questions from the audience. Please, given your questions, we have immediately we'll be able to ask Dr. Garg. Dr. Garg, we have another question for you from the audience, which, you earlier mentioned some of the things which we actually have been the first amongst any country to do. And perhaps we can say that in many cases, and even when I was reading out your bio, I was thinking that in many cases, instead of following other countries in terms of government initiatives, in fact, we lead in scope, scale, and technology. What do you feel about this? Any examples?
I think one can definitely think of a lot of examples, but I think one thing which I want to say
Yes.
And I must say that it's also coming out of, I spent 3 years at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. This is more than 15 years back. But even at that stage, I was part of what is called the governance mechanism of the World Bank, where 24 executive directors represent the entire 180 countries. I was part of the group that represented India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan. I think one can see a change even at that time. I'm talking about maybe 15 years back, and the last decade has seen that as accelerated change. That the voice of the global south, and within that, the voice of India, is so much more relevant and so much more given weight, if I can put it that way, than what was the situation 2 or 3 decades back. And I think that's the reason that, for example, we are now part of the UN Statistical Commission, which sets out the, the overall policies with regard to data and data collection by data. So we are making it a point to be part of that commission so that at the international policy making stage, we are on the table, and we ensure that whatever policies are being made internationally are something that work for us as a nation and work for the global south collectively. And I think that ability to be able to influence international decisions has become so much more over the past decade or more. And I think we need to utilize that in a much more effective manner. And I think organizations like yours, etc., would help provide the kind of, if I can say, the heft to be able to do that. So that is something I would say cuts across a number of sectors, but talking of data alone, that's something that we are very cognizant of, and something that we ensure that we are part of every decision making that happens at the international level.
Right. Thank you for those details, sir. We have another question. In the world of corporate or market research, we are seeing a lot of convergence between quantitative surveys, synthetic AI data, and qualitative methods. Any thoughts or instances of this being done at a larger policy or government level at MOSPI?
Yes, I think we've just made a beginning in that regard. I will say that, for example, administrative data is one thing which I didn't talk about while I focused my presentation on survey data. And by administrative data, I mean, for example, GST is, in one sense, an administrative data that the government gets. The toll data that the FASTag and the other collection mechanisms get. We have, let's say, MG Narega, which is the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. The number of people who come out for work on a day-to-day basis, that data is there. So we've identified somewhere around 250 odd data sets across around 40 ministries of large data sets that are collected and which have a lot of insights. There's a lot of information available. And how we can, for example, compare it with the survey data, with the market research data, if I can put it that way, that we have. And for that purpose, there are 4 or 5 things that we are doing. We've set out the metadata structure that each ministry should put out the data, so that if you want any government website, you are clear on what are the types of information available in a data. So the metadata standardize that or harmonize that. Have unique identifiers in that, so that if you want to compare 2 sets of data, we have an identifier by which you can compare. Have a basic quality assessment framework, so that and that should be available, so that you are able to judge that what is the quality in terms of dissemination timelines on the methods of collection and things like that. So what I'm saying is we are trying to harmonize the administrative data available with each ministry so that it becomes so much more interoperable and usable by researchers. Machine readability is just one basic thing, so that there's nothing on a PDF or an image file which is there because it makes it so difficult to use that. So this is something, I would say, which is extremely high on our priority. And as the nodal ministry for these kind of ensuring that official data follows a certain classification, certain mechanism, certain method in the madness, that is what we are focusing on.
Thank you, Dr. Garg. We have a very direct question, actually, from perhaps a very concerned and interested organization. How can more companies become part of the panel of MOSPI?
Yeah, in fact, this panel we brought out for the first time. And when we brought out the advertisement on our website and we put it around, we I won't say chased, but we literally begged people to please come and participate. So we will be bringing out a second lot, and this time we'll keep MRSI in the loop, which we were not. In fact, that's how we got in touch with MRSI and got to know about this. So we'll ensure that we would like, in fact, more organizations to participate. And what we can do internally is that most other ministries or department and state government seek our opinion on how they should go about it. We will mention it to them that they can get in touch with MRSI also to have a wider audience of whatever they are doing.
Thank you. I think there's time just about for one final question.
Sure.
So I think that all of us as statisticians and researchers, we tend to be comfortable with past data. That is what we project and sort of say, let's keep looking at trends on that past data. But, some things are different. So do you have any, maybe wild ideas or just something to say the world is changing and perhaps we need to look at things differently or look at certain different things? And any thoughts on that, sir?
So, that's what that's an area that we want more kind of collaborations. That's why we created a data innovation lab to look at possibilities like that on how we can get insights which we were not doing, or how two sets of data can work together to get insights, and 1 + 1 is not 2 but 11. So those are the kind of things that we would be very happy to collaborate with and get better analytics on the data, because any future projections in a way look at the past trends over, if not 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, and then they project. So both our data innovation lab and our research and analysis wing are focused on that, and we would be very happy to work with researchers who want to look at what innovations they can do in analysis and data insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Please request you to give Parijat Chakravarti, MRSI Treasurer, an opportunity to give you a small token of thank you from us.